Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're located, and welcome to Career Launch Live. I am so excited about this episode. I really, really am. This is our diversity episode. If you don't know, this episode is going to be a little bit more personal, a little bit more how do I say it? A little bit more emotional, probably, right? This is going to be a crazy topic. We're going to talk about all different kinds of diversity, and we're going to talk about how, from a personal perspective, you can overcome prejudice, how we can work towards better solutions and things like that. That's kind of what we're going to be going with. And we have international guests. We have guests from across the country. I'm very, very excited about this. In fact, one of our guests who just was last minute agreed to come on the show. I'm very excited about it. Is Henry Duhart, wonderful human being, organized some wonderful BLM events in our area as a political figure in the Treasure Coast area. And so I'm going to bring Henry on real quick. Let's see if we can get him in here. There we go. Hey, hi, Henry. Thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I love the opportunity to speak on the topics you talked about and your energy. So I was like, sure.
Yeah. We've never actually met in person, but I followed you on Facebook and I've attended one of your events, which was just incredible. And I loved it. And I loved your energy. And so I wanted to bring you on because I felt like you had a very smart, but also very personable approach to discussing the topic of diversity and inclusion. Mm-hmm. So first, please tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do day to day.
My name is Henry Duhart. I always consider myself an activist who just decided to run for office. You know, they would call me a politician, but I mean, when I was the person out on the streets with the Black Lives Matter movement organizing the rallies. I stand for
all peaceful. I want to throw that out there. All of them were peaceful.
They were awesome. It was a great event. I was very excited. I don't think many people got that experience. How we had a unique experience on the Treasure Coast.
We did,
where it was very uniting. The thing that should have been the national message is what actually happened here in the Treasure Coast. So I always say back to Treasure Coast.
We did it right.
We did it right. And so I just recently, of course, ran for office here for county commissions. Mm-hmm. It was an exciting experience, even though that we didn't get the majority vote. We got about 76,000 people who
that's amazing, though,
and supported what we stood for. And so it is only really heightened what I was already doing. Since going to FAMU, where I started really getting to activism. I'm a musician first, I'm an artist first, so I've been doing music my whole life, and that's taken me so many places. And then when I got to college, of course, on campus changes you, but off campus, I started getting involved with volunteering at the local homeless shelter. I got, I went to HBCU, which was a historically Black college, so I got that experience of starting to question things that I've always been told not to question, and it made me learn more about myself. And
so can you be more specific? What were some of those things that you ran into that impacted you?
One, just, the experience of not just being a proud Black man, but really, what does that mean? What is that day-to-day thing? It's not just saying, I call it the king complex, where everybody calls each other kings and everybody calls each other woke, but are we really doing that work? So what I always thought, it's not that I grew up in a suppressive society, since there's not signs that say whites only, and there's not obvious oppression.
Thank God.
But what we learned from this past 4 years is that it still exists. It just is a different.
Yes.
I like to call it the new Jim Crow. And it is it's worse because it's not as noticeable. Actually, it's a little. So that's where. In college,
I would agree with you.
My mind opened up in college to that, seeing all these people, and it just led me to come back home, running for office, because I originally ran for office because there was a hole. It was a pothole that really made me very upset, and that caused this whole thing. But I'm also a musician first. I love the arts, singing, opera, Broadway, rock. It doesn't matter.
And good for you. Good for you. And musicians, by the way, I've done a lot of research leading up to this episode, and the musical industry is actually one of the ones with the lowest disparity in wages, which I was very excited about. Go musicians, go artists, and the same thing with artists. It tends to not matter so much. So one thing I wanted to ask you, so you live where I do, South Florida, right?
Mhm.
Which is a very interesting, and we're in an interesting pocket. So people think South Florida, they think Miami, basically. That's what everybody thinks of.
Yeah.
But our little pocket of the world is very different, and it's a lot
Yeah.
more true South. It's a lot more country, a lot of greenery. It's very, very pretty. Um, what do you encounter most in this area in terms of disparity?
Yeah, I like to call it South Central Florida. Is really what we are. And disparities that still exist. One, gentrification is very live and well. Everybody knows what gentrification does to minority communities. Nobody's doing active
Mhm,
things, not just marching for it, but supporting the right ordinances, supporting your brothers and
mhm.
sisters when they present stuff to the county and city commissions to get the right things passed, to help them get through these things, to create affordable housing. Those things
Right.
still exist because it's fun to do. Like I do a lot of the social media stuff, but I also am known for you people met me before all that kind of stuff. Like I do
Oh,
the social media
yes.
stuff, but I'm there. Like I'm not just doing
Hmm.
photo op. Like I'm if you see me at any of the Black Lives Matter marches, all the photos caught of me were in action because I couldn't stop it.
Yes.
And I was like, all right, gotta make sure this is not going on.
Here we go.
I think what is missing is the awareness because there's so much going on. There's redlining still exists,
Hmm.
gentrification still exists, oppression still exists. There are people who live in project housing who've paid rent for 10, 12, 20 years and don't own one piece of that land, no one piece
That's
of
right.
that lot. Those and these are easy. The people we don't have homeless shelters in the church. Like these are easy things that people like to say in government that things take time. Some things do, but some
Yes.
things you can make happen. Like these, like until this day, the only thing that's going to really keep me going is the fact that I know there's some things. Not saying I know everything, but there's some things I know that if I totally stop with activism,
Hmm.
I couldn't live with myself because I know certain things. Because I saw a guy today, just another a homeless guy today, and it just really upset me because it's like I know what the government can do, and it's still not being
Yes.
done. So there's still oppression in the sense of everything that was before is just I think today's times helped us actually I don't say I'm grateful for Trump because no, but we were very complacent 4 years ago. We were
Hmm.
very sleep for you. We were very and I always say at the rally, it's none of this. The rally is just the fun part. It's the after that needs to change. So that's what I'm preaching the message of. Yeah, we got Joe Biden them in there, but that don't mean nothing. He can't do it alone. Karma can. We all need to keep it going. Keep being
Keep it
involved in the
going.
local
And
stuff.
even, and I don't think it matters if you're Republican, Democrat,
Mm-mm.
any of that. That doesn't matter. Get in there and make sure that your ethics and your integrity are at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is making sure that you're not doing anything. And a lot of times I feel like it's accidentally. A lot of the people I talk to, they don't realize what they're doing, right? And
Yeah,
that
I
what
have
they're
some
doing is
Republican
holding
friends.
people down. Yeah, yeah, I do too.
They have good intentions sometimes.
And historically, historically, I voted independent for the most part.
Mm,
Um, because I'm not really either party, right? So
mm,
I always, but it's about integrity and it's about putting people first and thinking outside of yourself. One of our later guests, Mervyn, he's going to come talk about that, and he's actually from the UK, and he's going to talk about that.
okay.
It's really about thinking about other people. Like, don't just stop with your own experience. Stop and think. Wait a minute, how can this affect other human beings, what I'm doing, the way I'm doing it, that type of thing, and just think about other people's experience. What do you think?
No, I agree. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I feel like it's a little lag. But
It's okay.
no, I totally yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes the cell phone acts right, sometimes it doesn't. But no, I totally agree. And I think that for me, I'm all about doing. I don't know how to explain. For me, I just think that that's what lacks. What we know now is this exists. We did not. There was never
Yes.
any. I mean, when you look at history, there was never any mass incarceration of the Ku Klux Klan or hate crime. Like literally, even with the Civil War, after the treason and losing and doing all the killing, they just got to go back and own their states again. So when you
Yep.
don't deal with the problem, it
Yeah.
exists, and that's really what it's like. I'm not surprised about a lot of things. I tell people all the time, like especially minorities, like to get themselves back on track. Don't. We want
Yes.
you to be confused. confused. They want you to lose your mind because, like we talk about resistance, and like say we go through a recession like we are now, and a lot of sometimes my minority friends, they'll be like, "Oh, we're in a recession." I'm like, we've do you know you're living the Black experience, right? Like, do not let anything focus. Some people, we've been like in a recession as a Black community. We still been. So what I'm saying is those things, those headlines keep you unfocused. Don't
Yes.
let anything, whatever happens. My grandma taught me this: to swallow it, figure out how you can move forward, because confusion gets you nowhere. Focus, focus, focus.
Yes.
Everything that's happening is great. Everything coming together, generations coming together, races coming together. It's gonna be, that's the healing, not hiding it, but openness and dealing with the issues.
100%. And I want to thank you so much. I have to move on to my next guest, Henry, but thank you so much for taking the time. It means the world.
No problem.
For coming on and talking with us. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And we're going to be welcoming on Jolene Clemens. I'm very excited about her. She is a wonderful, dynamic human being who focuses her whole career on bringing and making sure that organizations, why am I telling you? It's about diversity. Bring her on here. Jolene, why am I telling people what you do?
Hello. Good morning, Catherine. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you on. I'm really excited that you decided to join me. And so tell us a little bit about your fascinating company and what it is that you're bringing to the workplace.
All right. Well, our company is I've Been Vetted, but our flagship product is called Risk Karma. And our goal is to bring together risk that companies have and tie it into creating transparency, accountability, equality, and safety in the workplace for improved culture and reduced risk.
Yes, 100%. And so what have you found, if anything, is one of the key issues when it comes to diversity and how that ties into other problems within the company that affect the bottom line?
Right. Well, when you look at things relative to employer liability, there are issues that tie directly to EEOC violations and the culture of the company, right?
Yes.
And when you have a culture where the employees aren't vested and it's broken, it affects the entire organization.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't stop and process when they're running an organization. So let's talk about, so this is our diversity episode. And you've worked in HR your whole career. You worked around in and around HR. And I work in recruiting. For anybody that doesn't know, that's what I do. I'm also developing a anti-discrimination applicant tracking system. So this is something that's a big passion point. So one thing that I think is interesting is everybody thinks that prejudice and diversity only pertains to racial issues, but that's not true.
No.
So there is, gender, there is sexual preference, there is age. Age is a big one right there, guys. Ageism is a huge problem right now in our workplace. There is people with disabilities. That's why we have ADA, right? So what are some of the biggest concerns that you've seen as it affects the workplace?
Yeah, well, and I'm coming mainly too from, granted, I managed a litigation department for large insurers, but my background is in risk management, compliance, and insurance.
That's true. Yeah.
And with the evolving definition of who's an employee to include contractors, we're seeing an increase in risk and employer liability. And one of the ways too that our platform helps companies to measure, track, and change those issues through real-time data insights. And hey, let's face it, 700 million users are anticipated to be coming online in the next few years. These are new customers. And as we spoke before, creating the right type of culture, it also equates to more profit for a company. And having that proactive inclusion in product development allows you to reach untapped audiences and ensure that your culture is the type of culture to attract the top talent so that you don't run into some of the liability risks like sexual assault or active shooter, theft, what have you. Having a diverse culture where there's an understanding of the commonalities that we have as humans here is increasingly important, and it helps companies, right, to reach those untapped audiences.
Right. And I want to touch on a couple of things that you said there. So first of all, the importance of company messaging, both internally, right, to the employees and the staff, and also externally to the customer. So I ran into a great organization, wonderful organization, I'm not going to give the name for the purposes of the show, that is national, actually soon to be international, that somehow had ended up with nothing but white people in their leadership. And it was not intentional. When I brought it to their attention, there was kind of a shock value of, oh, and then it was an immediate response of, but we would take anybody, we're putting the information out there. And so I asked them, well, what are you doing to specifically market to people of diverse races and things like that? Well, nothing. and it was just a matter of not understanding that needed to be done. So what are some of the tips that you would give a company that wants to make sure that they're including everybody?
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to track the initiatives that you set for diversity and inclusion. That is something that we have within our Risk Karma dashboard. And you have to, like you indicated earlier, you need to look at different areas. You need to look at gender. You need to look at race. You need to look at the extent to which people are being promoted, not just from the first line management, but all the way up to the board, because that sets the tone for the company.
That's right.
And so, yeah.
Yes, 100%. And I want to know, so you were talking about the stats and all of that. So I did a lot of research before the show, and there were a few things that really stuck out to me, a few numbers that just really stuck out to me. So I'm going to read them to you, and I want to kind of get your response to them. So in the United States, Caucasian people make up around 60%. People that are only Caucasian, nothing else, make up about 60% of our population. White males make up about 37.3% of our workforce. That's according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, okay? Then, according to Deloitte, women, while they make up 41% of management, only make up 7.4% of executives.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a huge disparity. And so women are being promoted up to management, but not with any real power within the company, right? It kind of seems to stop. And the same thing is true of minorities, which have an even more horrible disparity. So they make up approximately, where is it? They make up about 40 some odd percent of our workforce, and yet have 3.2% of executives in place. Right. And as of 2 years ago, only 30% of Fortune 500 board seats, so all the board members, this is over 5,000 board members, okay? Only 36% of them were either female or minority. That is so small. That is so small. Yeah. So that means that 37.3% of our workforce is holding 64% of the true power positions.
Right. And the problem with that is, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, it equates to dollars and cents. Companies are spending so much money on data to get these insights from their consumers when they can have free information by hiring a population of workers that at least represents their target market, right? You're looking at, when you mentioned, for women, $18 trillion in income in 2020. That equates to profits for a company.
Yes.
And so your company needs to reflect that, the percentage to which you have consumers in that category for LGBTQ market.
Yes.
And this was back in 2017, 917 billion, and then 1.4 trillion for Black spending power in 2020. And these are untapped customers and audiences.
Yes.
And so without having someone at the table, a large enough percentage, you cannot accurately market, nor is it creating the type of culture to attract the type of talent to get things done.
Right. Absolutely. And I love how you talked about the talent aspect, because that's my domain. It's what I work with. Right. And I see that all the time, that in fact, this surprises a lot of people. I still have had companies over the last 4 or 5 years ask me to not hire a certain race for them, or to not bring in a certain, women, or to not bring in people of a certain age. That's insane in this day and age, that this is still happening. And this is a regular occurrence in hiring, folks. Okay. This is not exclusive to me. I've spoken to many, 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 many recruiters and HR professionals, and it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. The other thing that cracks me up is about, when it comes to hiring, is this hilarious idea that other races are lazy. So I want to take a second and just disparage that. Right. We're just going to squash that ridiculous rumor right now. So again, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the number one group for participation in workforce by percentage of their population in our country are the Hispanic people. They are at the very, very top. Practically tied with Caucasian people is the Black community. The Asian community is about 1% higher than the Caucasian and or the white and the Black communities as well. So there's nobody out there that's just lazy. There's not a group of people that is just lazy. That is completely ridiculous. Right. And yet you hear it all the time. I hear that constantly. Oh, this group is just lazy. Oh, that group is just lazy.
Yeah, what's interesting is you're speaking about, terms that are used to describe, and that's another issue, right? So even when it comes to there are, biases that exist, the terms that are used, even on performance appraisals, on men versus females, and that there was a study by Dr. Lori McIntyre in regards to that, and even how we describe ourselves, because the populations that are not getting promoted and getting hired at the percentage that they should be, they've become accustomed to hearing these terms and assuming that they're okay.
Right.
And they may not be lazy, but they're considered terms that are not strong or empowering, or terms that the algorithm will pick up, when someone's looking for a candidate.
Right.
So it's very important for us to also look at how we describe ourselves. Of course, we're not going to use the terms lazy, but
I hope not.
terms that are showing strength, and I think there needs to be more of an education around that. That is just kind of a recent science. So I'm hoping that more and more information is disseminated in regards to that.
100%. And I love that you're very focused around companies taking the time to use their resources, which are their people, to gather the information and to learn. In fact, I brag on my mother all the time. I on the show, I do. And she started some wonderful conversations on diversity and equity and inclusion and in her organization. And some of the things that she learned were heartbreaking. Some were fascinating. The things that she just didn't know, or that the organization didn't know. And they've really started making some steps to grow as a company, and it's making the world of difference, and employee satisfaction is increasing and things like that. This is something, just talking to people makes all the difference. Bring people in and sit them down and have a conversation and go, hey, what do you think? What's going on? What's really happening? Tell me. There are things you're going to miss, especially if you're in a leadership position. There are things that are going to happen that you don't see, that once you turn your back, once you leave the room, that will be different, right? And it's important to learn what those things are, and then to come up with a plan of attack, so to speak, to fix it, to make it better, to grow. So as people are doing this, as people are having these conversations and things like that, when it comes to utilizing data, because that's one of your strong points, is utilizing data, what is the best way to take that data and create an action from it?
It's important first to properly track the data. And share it. The key is to share it amongst all management level and even with transparency to the workers. Because there was a book written by Reid Hoffman and Chris Ye called The Alliance, which I really like, and it talks about how important the workers are to creating a not just a great culture, but as the workers leave, they have an affinity for the culture, because that communication that you're talking about creates the team building. And a lot of that involves accountability and transparency. So involving the workers in the culture and having them have a vested interest in creating the culture that's comfortable for them. Then when you have an opening in a department and you're seeking the right candidate, your workers can be helped with the recruitment, and because they know what the culture is and they know what they're looking for, and involve them with recruiters and other applications like yours, which I absolutely love. Help to assist and improve the company and help it, remain competitive.
100%. Yes. And so there you go, folks. Listen to other people. And this is even true if you're talking about your customers, okay? You need to be listening to them, and don't just send out those hokey surveys, okay? Whether you're talking about employees or customers, nobody cares, okay? Do things that create real conversation and generate real results. Those are the things you're looking for. So real quick, before we move on to our next guest, Jillian, I wanted to I want to ask this of everybody. Have you yourself in the workplace ever been the recipient of discrimination?
Yeah, and it's a lot of times it can be indirect or statements that are made.
Can you give an example?
Unfortunately, I can say this, that I was working at a company and I heard a regional vice president say to a fellow employee that happened to be an attorney, African-American attorney, stellar employee. He asked him, how was your day? How was your week? And he said something. I didn't hear his response, but I heard this regional vice president say, but it's better than picking cotton. And that stuck with me. This was, that stuck with me. I could not believe it. Yeah.
That's one of the worst I've ever heard.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah, really bad. And I mean, it leaves a mark, right? I remember that this was in the 1990s. And so
it still happens though.
Ago. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And it still happens. People, I mean, I've heard other things, not quite that bad, but I've heard a lot of other things like that just drop your jaw, and you're going, really, in this day and age, this is still happening?
And it was a company that I admired, and I was just totally surprised. But once again, it's a culture thing. So, right.
Yes.
And if you have your other workers, and this was in an open cubicle area where everyone heard. So that set the tone for the office in how others could be treated.
100%. And that is something that I have seen over and over and over again. You disrespect the one, and it is like a virus, and it just trickles down. So that's one thing I've imparted on several of my clients is it doesn't matter if it's just one person, okay, which is bad enough. It will affect every other person in the office. And with that, Jolene, thank you so much for coming and for your contributions.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to welcome on our first international guest of the day. Let's get him on the screen with me. Where'd he go? Where's Marvin? There he goes, Mr. Marvin Kennedy McCoy. How are you?
I'm fine. And yourself? You good?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm really good. So you and I had a great conversation yesterday. It was, I enjoyed it. First of all, where are you from? I just introduced you as international. So where are you from?
I'm from the UK, London. So that's
Nice.
my accent, and my accent will probably shift. So I'm using my British accent right now, but things like very often when I'm listening to people speak, I just take on the accent. One example, I was in Corsica and I speak French, and I was there for like 2 weeks or a week, and by the time I left, I had a Corsican French accent. So if you hear me shift to American, it's just because I just do this chameleon mimicking thing, which is like
I do that too. And nobody ever guesses that I'm from Texas.
Oh, there you go. You see,
I have been born and raised. Yeah.
I can't hear it.
Well, good. I'm actually kind of glad. I don't want to sound like a hick, at least, But I don't know if you heard. Did you hear the statistics that I was discussing with Jolyn? Yeah. It really was interesting. But so we talked about the executives having an just unfathomably low percentage of minority executives, below 4%, and below 8% are women. And that's so crazy to me. And that's where it stops. So you and I talked about that, companies like to make themselves look really good by saying we have this percentage of this race or this percentage of this gender, but they don't stop and say, but this is how many are actually in power.
Of course, I mean they don't. I mean, this conversation having yesterday is like, I mean, there are very interesting ways that you can kind of. I think LinkedIn had did their how do you call it, their diversity report, and I just had some fun going through it and reading it differently. Basically, and I looked at the positions where power was, and I kind of did a different mapping, and I basically put power, how do you call it, quite a bit of power, a little bit of power. How do you call it? Less power, no power.
Right.
And as you move up, when you're at the top, what I say kind of like that kind of scale, you'll find majority men, majority white men, and a couple of white women. And as you move down, you start having the different races. And so this whole thing, like I say, that there's a big conversation. There's the anti-racist conversation, but there's also the colorism conversation. And I think that the one thing that people don't seem to realize, and when we talk about white supremacy, people think like, oh, it's the white extremists. I'll just give us a couple examples. If you go to Asia, right? Asian people will cut their eyelids, right? So they have the fold, right? If anybody's an anime fan and knows Dragon Ball Z, right? Japanese cartoons, they're all European. Right. When Goku, who's like one of the main characters, when he becomes a Super Saiyan, his hair turns blonde and his eyes turn blue. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was a kid watching that, and I learned about the Aryan race and Hitler's kind of grand vision, and and kind of everybody being and the representation of kind of the superhuman being was a blonde guy with blue eyes. And I was just like, this is Japan. Right. And so what people don't seem to realize is this whole thing of things like going back to the scale of the diversity inclusion, things get whiter as you go up and get darker as you go down.
It's true.
And that's the problem. That is a problem. And it's not, and even if it's a matter of as you said, if at least it was a proportionate representation of the population, I'd be okay with that, because at least you have the proportion of, the
percentages, right?
The mapping, but it's not even close. Right. And basically, what we see in companies is that basically the further up you go, the whiter the people are, the more male they are, and also and things like there's no trickle down effect, and also there's also the people don't talk about this. There's also the effect of homophily, which is basically how people empathize with people who are like them. And this is the reason why, as far as trying to get companies to be more diverse, I think they have to be forced. I think there have to be laws that say you have to have this percentage of people, because otherwise they don't think outside of their type.
It's true. People don't think outside. We talked about this yesterday, even just talking about left-handed people, right? And how there's a very decent part of the population, and yet every product is designed for right-handed people. And it's, which, I mean, luckily what you and I were talking about were simple things like opening jars and all, which is an inconvenience and that type of thing. But when and that's still bad enough. But as it gets a bigger scale and you're talking about your income and your growth potential, it's monumentally a bigger deal. And people tell me, oh, it's an education problem. Well, let me run you through some of my more statistics. I got more statistics for you folks. So according to the U.S. Department of Labor, even when it comes to equal, so I'm going to do gender real quick because I know you're a big feminist anyway. So we're going to talk about the gender gap. Even with equal education, so with bachelor's degree, women will still earn 24.8% less. With an advanced degree, 25.4% less. Yep. With the age gaps, this fascinated me. Starting as early as the age of 16 to 19. So when you very first enter the workforce, you don't have any skills. You don't know anything at that age. Give me a break. You're all working at McDonald's or something, making 10.6% less. Women make 10.6% less than boys. So these girls that are teenagers who have the exact same lack of skills as the boys who are teenagers are making 10.6% less. That is nuts. That is certifiably insane. There is no reason that would ever exist. And then as you get older, the gap increases. Yep. So the value, the idea seems to be from what I read on the U.S. Department of Labor, from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and just articles that I've read about the psychology behind it, people start to perceive that women's value has gone down as they get older, and that men's value has gone up.
Well, I mean, it's also, I mean, like as far as like I said, the patriarchy, even the whole thing, like in society, it's like in French they have this awful term that they say that men, how do you call it? Men as they get older, it's like to mûrir, is basically to ripen, right? Kind of like they mature. And women rot. That's a term that is widely used, like in kind of like in French culture, like les hommes mûrissent et les femmes pourrissent. So which is like, it's just awful. It's an awful term. And so you see, it's a perpetuation of what you see in society. So I mean, like the whole thing of like kind of like, I mean, okay, I'm 46, and I have no interest whatsoever in girls who are 20. It's like I haven't had a midlife crisis, right? But we have this. But there's this kind of what I say value add that the guys have as they get older, and means like they get older, like they have more money, this, that, and the other, and they can purchase. It's almost like I can purchase myself a young chick, right? And so in society, there's always this thing like, well, if women are younger, they're kind of like, they're more valuable. And as they get older, there's less interesting. And I think it's a perpetuation. It's like you see repeated in many, many different spheres. And it's sad. It's what I say, how do you call it, backward, and it completely it leaves out a whole bunch of people who have tons of experience, tons of expertise, and they're outside of the workforce, and we're wondering like, why is it that companies don't work? I mean, why is it like we can't find people? Why is it there's so many people out of work? And also another piece of research that's really interesting is the one where they talk about once you have proportional representation of women and men in companies and how productivity goes up. And I always like this one because I like to bait men because I personally feel that women are smarter than men. And this
I would agree.
No, I'm serious. No, hold on. But this piece of research shows it like without any doubt. And so the piece of research that says that like a man will apply for a job that he's not qualified for a lot more often than women, right?
That's true.
So I was like, well, when companies are inefficient and they're full of men, right? It makes perfect sense that when you add women to the mix, they're more productive and they make more money, because basically you're basically replacing a whole bunch of guys. No, it's true. It is totally true. A whole bunch of guys that are thereabout competent, right? Mm-hmm. With women who really can do the job, because women will only apply for jobs that they know that they can do. And very
Typically
often,
speaking, yes, that's very true.
And also when a woman gets to a position that a guy is at, right? And this is why I often say also to guys, it's like, we live in a patriarchy. We live in a system that is made for us. So like we're swimming adequately to the goal, and we're always swimming downstream, right? And we have our male friends patting us on the back and even pushing us forward. When a woman makes it within patriarchy, it's like being a salmon swimming upstream.
Swimming upstream, right? Yeah.
And when you have men trying to stop you getting there. And so for me, it's like whenever a woman gets to the position of a man, obviously she's way better than he is. It's like it goes without that.
Because she fought harder.
She's fought harder, but she often has to be twice or 3 or 4 times as qualified.
And it's true. And minority women, it's even more so.
Exactly. And that's what it's coming to.
It's 2 to 3 times harder. And again, according to the U.S. Department of Labor and my research also with Deloitte, is that minority women have it 2 to 2.5 times harder than white women.
Yeah.
And it's because they have multiple things. They fit into more than one prejudicial category, and what really will kick you give you a nice big kick and make your life more difficult is that on top of that, you have one of the non-visible categories of prejudice that apply to you. And one of those is to have a disability of some kind, or to have a medical condition or a mental health concern, or something like that. And those things will knock you down again. I have actually been let go of from a job because of my medical condition.
Which is?
I have one of my teen ones. I have a seizure disorder, and they didn't like that I had to take time off for testing. And by the way, all my work was always done. Nothing was ever left incomplete, not ever. And there we go. And it's unreal. It's really, really crazy to me that this stuff happens. And I know people that have hearing disabilities. We talked about that yesterday, that are constantly receiving discrimination. And even something as funny as I've actually knew a manager that refused to hire left-handed people. Refused. Just had this whole, he had a superstition about them. And just no, it's weird to me. It's weird to me.
Well, the thing is, because we didn't speak about this yesterday, but I was born left-handed, and I was sent to live with my grandparents in Sierra Leone when I was 2.5. And basically, when I got there, because they're religious people, they basically, it sounds really bad, but kind of like I was brought up in Sierra Leone. It's like I had a really tough childhood. That's just kind of how disciplined kids. But I was literally beaten with a cane, to become right-handed. And wow. because as far as they were concerned, it was the hand of the devil. So if you because Jesus goes up to heaven and goes down to the right hand side of God and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so I was like, yes. The discrimination, what I say is rife, and I think that as a society, we don't think outside of ourselves. It's like we. And somebody if I mention doctor, I mention surgeon, I mention it's already in the name, fireman, right? It's like bus conductor. You think of men automatically because
yes.
They're the only people that we see. And also I think why people are getting things twisted is because these things were brought up a couple of years ago. For example, if you do the search now, if you do a search on Google Images, you do beauty, you see diverse types of beauty, right?
Yes.
But finding diverse types of beauty in Google doesn't mean that you have diverse types of beauty in fashion, right?
Right.
Finding if I look up the word doctor, finding diverse pictures of different types of doctor, Asian, Black, women, LGBTQ, might look fantastic on Google, but you don't find that same diversity in real life.
Right.
So And even, for example, me and my mother were talking about it yesterday. If you look at the BBC, there is not a single person that I know till this day who reads prime time news who has a visible disability. There's not a single one.
Interesting.
Not a single one. So they have a young lady who has one arm who does the weather. They have, two people, that have physical physical how do you call it, say disabilities, otherwise abled, who are in wheelchairs
Okay.
or motorized machines, and they do programs, but nobody on prime time. And also
Interesting.
another part of society nobody ever thinks about, how do you call it, people of small stature. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
apart from the last person that we saw, and I forget his name, who was in Game of Thrones. It's like, where are they? It's like,
Yeah.
there's nothing is made for them. They don't do talk show hosts. They don't exist. They don't brush their teeth even. They don't wash their hands. I mean,
Apparently, yeah.
you don't see them anywhere. And
People
so I
don't
think
people don't
part of
talk. Yeah, and don't listen.
they don't, I mean, and they just don't think. It's like, and because they're not exposed. Me personally, I've always thought like this, and I don't understand. I don't need to be exposed to personal small stature to know that they exist. I don't need to be exposed to them to know that I don't see them, on the news. I don't see them
Right.
in adverts. I barely ever see them in a movie at all. And
Yes.
so it's all these kind of things. And if you don't grow up with them, I mean, I knew somebody who was afraid of people of small stature. Like she was like, she had like an actual phobia of them. I was like, they're human beings. I mean, it's like, what is wrong with you?
I have an idea that if people, I'm naturally curious, right? I'm a little sponge. I just love to learn from people and to go out and meet and have new information given to me. And if I read something, I go do tons of research to know if that's true or what the other side of it is. That's just how my brain works. But not everybody is that way. And most human beings only look at what's right in front of them. And that's their whole world. That's it. Whole world is right here. And so
Ignorance.
it is. It's voluntary ignorance, which that's what makes, in today's world where we have the internet, ignorance could maybe be excused pre-internet, maybe.
Exactly.
But now you have no excuse, none. Get on Google and learn about some people. If you see something, if you see a news story or anything like that, get on there and learn. Have a conversation. I get on LinkedIn and I connect to people and start conversations just to learn, just to figure out, hey, what's going on in your country? What's the real deal? What's happening? What do you think about this? And the people who are brave enough to get on LinkedIn and say we need change, or Facebook or wherever, and say we need change. It's time to do this, and yay minorities, and yay women, and yay LGBTQ and disabled people and all that, and let's make everybody, let's give everybody an equal shake, and don't look at them like they're bad. Don't look at them like they're different. There's no them and us. There's only we. And you know what made me really sad is that one of my guests that was supposed to be on today had to ghost social media because she was getting death threats. And she wasn't being mean to anybody. She was just saying, let's love everybody. Let's have equality for everybody. And people just, there were people that hated her for it. And she literally had to go into hiding for a while.
This thing about like death threats, I find, and this is what really really gets me, and it's probably also the reason like why I'm such a strong feminist. The only people that get them, like, because I mean, people probably watching know Madison Butler. Madison Butler got them, right?
Yes.
The only people that I know who've gotten death threats on LinkedIn are women.
Yes.
Nobody in all the time, because I've called people out. Nobody, not a single person, woman or man, has ever given me a death threat. And for me, that's the whole thing of like the same kind of like that you see in society, kind of like, men abusing women, and kind of like, and also even LinkedIn. I mean, this is live, but I mean, LinkedIn let this stuff go on.
Yes.
Chandra Hardy, who's been removed from LinkedIn, she sent me 150 screenshots plus of just like torrents of just abhorrent, disgusting abuse. And these guys still have their profiles. And,
yes.
And the things like, I mean, and the things like, I just don't, and the things like, these tough guys, so-called tough guys, I'm just like, if you're a real man, let's talk in their language, right? Like, they've got big cojones,
real,
and
man.
like, blah blah blah. They're really obsessed with it. They have phallic obsessions, and like, blah blah. Everything's about the size of their penis. Where is the glory in attacking, in between brackets, a woman? Because I mean, obviously, a woman's beneath you. It's like, why are you giving death
in his
to
mind?
women?
Yes. In his mind,
Yeah.
yes. Well, and also,
and I'm just like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't
I
make any
think
sense.
it's people that are threatened. They don't understand. They are afraid for ridiculous reasons. And Madison, if you don't follow her, I highly recommend her to everyone. Madison Butler, lovely human being. She has 3 of the categories. You know, she's a woman, she is a minority, and she's LGBT. You know, the whole spot. And the idea that somebody threatened her is unreal to me, because she posts nothing hateful, nothing ugly.
No. She got death threats. She actually had at one point, basically, I mean, there's this woman who basically did a YouTube video, and it's really funny, because, like, I mean, I find that people, I wasn't going to talk politics, but I have to. But basically, I find that people who follow Donald Trump, and who support him, they have his same kind of lingo. So I mean, basically, she did a video, I think like a 30-odd minute video, where she was basically just like, you know, having a rant about Madison Butler. And the first thing she starts off by doing, and this is just reverse psychology, and it's interesting because we're going to have your sister on afterwards, who's a psychologist. But she was like, the first thing she said on the video, I don't want y'all to go after her. I don't want y'all to go after her. It's like, well, I mean, it's like the same thing, like if when you tell people, please don't panic, what are people going to do?
They immediately start panicking.
Exactly, because the last thing they're going to remember is the last thing you said. Please don't run. Please don't rush. It's like,
and real quick, let's bring Michaela on so she can join in on this. Hold on. We're going to bring our psychology and counseling expert. Hello, lovely. Okay. So Michaela, meet Mervin. Mervin, meet Michaela. This is the better
Mervin.
This is the better McCord sister, the sweeter one. This is her.
Anyway.
Yeah. So go ahead with what you were saying. So I just wanted her to be able to chime in.
And that's pretty much what she was saying. She's like, I don't want y'all to go after her at all, and this just the video, and she mentioned that several times. I'm just like, you know, it's subliminal messaging. It's like, I'm like, well, you know, kind of like, exactly, kind of like, I mean, if you don't want them to go after her, you simply don't mention it. Period.
Yeah, just don't say it.
Right? And also,
the entire problem.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like the whole premise around which she did her video, regardless of whether she had mentioned that or not, they would have gone after her anyway. So I mean, you know, and this may matter as well. So I mean, and I find that, like, it's often the men who do it, and then once the men do it, then, you know, how do you call it, the female and anybody else who's going to want to troll that person will feel emboldened to do so, because like your sister was saying before, that once you allow it to happen to one person, then other people feel that they can do it to other people.
Oh, it's a snowball effect.
Snowball effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely a snowball effect. I couldn't agree more. And I don't know how long you have today. I don't know if you could stay on a little bit, at least during my segment. Because here she is. Hi.
I came back. Hi.
Because the reason I asked you to stay on, Mervin, is because I'm going to be talking about discrimination and what the psychology behind discrimination is. And addressing the elephant in the room, I'm obviously a privileged white female. And so I just wanted to point that out and say that I am speaking strictly to the psychology. And I thought that it would be helpful to have you stay on and sort of give your feedback and your thoughts on the subject, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. It's cool. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah. So the first thing I really wanted to address is sort of this idea of discrimination, that after just repeated exposure to discrimination, just ongoing discrimination. I really like the analogy that you gave, Mervin, of the swimming upstream. That's really what you're doing. You're fighting a current. And that current is discrimination that's perpetuated through things like what you were just talking about. Through things like podcasts, talk shows. It's perpetuated in its growth, but it is in our society. And so the psychology that I see behind that is that people learn they can't do for themselves. They learn that their efforts aren't effective, hence the swimming upstream. It's like they can't ever get there because they have this continual pushback. And this leads to things like a lack of motivation, depression, anxiety. I mean, all of the big ones. And judging by your face, it seems like you have some thoughts on this.
Well, no. I mean, it's just. I mean, like I said, that's the reason why I use that analogy, because basically, if you're swimming upstream, right, where say your route to the same thing that everybody else is actually vying for is that much harder. of course you're going to have,
Yes.
of course you're going to be more mentally stressed. Of course you're going to be more physically stressed. Of course you're going to fall sick more often. Of course you won't be able to focus as much. And I mean, I grew up I was brought up in a single parents' home, a single mother. And my mom, put me, my sister, and my brother all through, all of us through university on one salary. And like in her lifetime, she's owned about 2 homes. I'm 46. I don't own jack, right? But she did that as one person, and and all the while fighting against what I can say a lot of discrimination. And one of the things that there was an issue for my mom is like it was really hard and difficult for her to just be happy. Like and it was really tough. And I remember one day I was whistling and I was really happy and everything. And I was young. I mean, I was between 6 and 10. And she goes and she looks at me. She goes, "What do you got to be happy about?" And it stays with me. I'm 46 and I still remember it. But like I was like, and like now it makes sense because I was like, my mom was just like she was 3 children. Yeah. Everything was a struggle all the time, like all the time. It's like she never got any respite,
Right.
And for her to get respite, I mean, I think that's probably the reason why she sent myself eventually like to weekly boarding school, sent my sister to boarding school, because I mean, you just need to breathe. And like, and that's not what she, when she signed up, to marry my now father, they never really were together, but like he didn't kind of like, chalk up to what the expectations that what they'd arranged. She didn't sign up to be a single parent, but that's what she ended up being. So I mean, like when you speak to the mental strain or the fatigue, of just like the day to day of having to struggle, of like, you're barely managing to feed your kids, or you manage to feed them, but when you go to work, it's a battle because like you're dealing with like sexual harassment, you're dealing with like being undermined. You're just getting a respite, and people forget that on average, your average human being sleeps about 8 hours, but we spend 8 hours in the workplace.
Yeah,
yes,
it's like a huge chunk of our lives.
It's massive.
So if you're 5 days a week, you're waking up. And that's what you have to go to. That's what you have to go to. People who don't understand you, people who don't consider you, people who talk over you, people who just like act as if you're not there. People who just basically say things and they're not thinking about what they're saying. And that is your day-to-day, 5 days a week. It's unbearable.
It's discrimination fatigue and discrimination burnout is what it is. Yeah. And it especially hit me in the gut earlier, Mervyn, when you said that your mother asked you, what do you have to be happy about? Because it hit me straight in the gut, because that's really the problem that we're facing. And what else occurred to me while you were talking, Mervyn, was that, a lot of people claim to be equal opportunity employers. And when we're talking about discrimination and swimming upstream, where's the equal opportunity? Because you're right, you have so many people who are just fighting and fighting and fighting. There is no equal opportunity because the other fish, they're already upstream. The people who are competing against are already way upstream. So
and that what we talked about earlier, that such a small percentage of minorities and women are in true power positions, really does make a difference. And one of the things, and I'm not going to go into politics, but just that I thought was a very beautiful statement, was I watched a video of a little girl, a little African-American girl, talking about what it meant to her to see Kamala Harris going into office. She's like, she looks like me. She looks like me. I can do this. It was just this excitement, like, oh, I can do this. This is something. And people don't, I think that a lot of white people, I'm just going to call it out, forget that it's only recently been that we got rid of Jim Crow and all that, right? It's in our lifetime, my parents' lifetime. This is recent. And that we're still not there yet. There's still not enough minorities across the board, any minority and true power positions. There's not enough in politics. It's getting better. It's getting better. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even representation, that's what we're really talking about. It's just, and one of the things that was most powerful for me, and this is actually an example that I really like to bring up, is Black Panther. And that was like the first superhero that you see who is African or just Black, who has that color. That's the first thing. I'm watching through the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies right now with my boyfriend, and we were just talking last night that you don't see any people of color. Like, you just don't. And I'm like, the Hobbit.
There can't be black hobbits. There can't be black hobbits. I mean, come on now.
But that's the thing. There's just no inclusion. I mean, the thing is, like, it's like, I think that's the thing. It's like, I think one, because a lot of people were talking about how do you call it, Robin DiAngelo, and like, you know, white fragility initially was like seen as a good thing, then was seen as a bad thing, and like, you know, people have different positions on it. But one of the things that I found that she said that was really, really impactful when I watched some of the videos, she said, like, she asked the audience, like, you know, do you realize that you've gone through your life, either in listening to African or Black music. I mean, I would say R&B, but like music, or because I don't like white music and Black music. I don't think music has a color myself. But anyway, listening to like Black influenced music, like Marvin Gaye and but and she goes like, and it's never occurred to you that you don't. That you could actually have, you could get value from having a Black person in your life. She was like, and she was like, so many of you like will go to your grave never having had a true Black friend. Like, and that is the thing. The thing is, like, I find in white society is like people I mean you guys are white, so I'm going to say how, but like white people can exist amongst themselves. And just be oblivious to any other culture. And
it's very true.
And as if like they have nothing to learn. And like what I find interesting about that is, like, even within white culture, like if you to take like the British culture and you take British cuisine, which I hate, right? But I hate British cuisine, like, you know, Yorkshire pie and everything. I don't like it. But it's like kind of like there's some British people will say their favorite food is either pizza, right, which is like Italian, it's not British, or they like curry. And it's like all our cultures, or we'll say globally, are better because we have things from other cultures.
Yes.
Right. And I'm just like, and so if it's not just a question of like, well, I like to eat Chinese food, but I don't like Chinese people. It's like kind of like let's get to know each other. And right at the beginning of the movement, I had somebody reach out to me asking, you know, what can I do and how can I engage? And I was like, and how can I kind of like, you know, be an ally and also be a co-conspirator, and how can I support, you know, how do you call it, Black people? And I said, do you have any Black friends? Like, you know, do you go to Black areas in London and go and eat in Black restaurants? And like simple things like because if you hang out there, you'll meet people, you speak to people. You how do you call it? You fraternize with people, and you start getting friendly, and so on and so forth. Like, and she has a daughter, I think, and I don't think her daughter has, apart from maybe the Black kids she's at school, right? You know, kind of like hasn't had a Black friend come over for a sleepover and stuff like that. It's just like, it's very, very simple. It's just the normal things that you do with your white friends. Find yourself a Black person, and do it too. Or a Chinese person, or an LGBTQ person. You know,
we become so comfortable in what we have in our daily lives and our daily schedules. And I actually have a friend who's in my I'm in a master's program, if you didn't know that, Mervyn, for counseling. And I have one more semester. And one of my friends at a different campus, I actually commend him because he's a white male, Caucasian, like mid-40s. And he does research. Like, he reads all these books about discrimination and like how he can help with discrimination and with racism and the things that he can do. He's a big supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. And he's actually been really inspirational to me in that regard. So I think it's things like that, like just pointing out the problem and saying things like, Catherine and I are a member of the white majority. We're privileged white women, and we're sitting here having this conversation. I think these are the things that need to happen.
Well, and then you have to make action out of it. You know, you can't just run your mouth. For instance, I told a story earlier about an organization that I ran to, which I really, really like. It's a national, soon to be international organization. And they asked me to be a leader of a certain part of their group. And I was all into it. And then all of a sudden, I was looking through, you know, videos of their events and things like that. And I realized everybody's white that's in power, like that's in power. Yeah. This is the whitest group of people I've ever seen in my life. And not everybody in the organization, okay, but just everybody in power. And so I reached out to them and I said, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm out, deuces. And they said, why are you backing out? I said, I can't be part of this. This is horrible. Like, you are a national organization, hundreds of people, and you're telling me you can't find one Black person, one Hispanic person, one Middle Eastern person, something. So here's what happened, though. They had not realized this about themselves.
Right? Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, it's the level of ignorance, and it's like, and the thing is, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess my experience is one of a Black man. I don't know if I can truly understand that is like that can be a mistake.
You know what I think it is?
I'm not saying that it's what I say, it's premeditated. I'm not saying I wouldn't go that far, but I'm just like, you can't not notice these things. I mean, it's like,
that one's a pretty tough one not to have noticed. I will preface my next statement by agreeing with you there that one in particular was very hard not to have noticed. But a lot of times what I've seen is, at least in my conversations with other people, is that they don't think of themselves as racist or uninclusive or anything. And so therefore, anything that they do cannot be that. It's just this, I don't identify that way. No, the way that you make sure that you stay that way is by double checking yourself and going, oh, whoops,
I actually have some psychology behind this. Very subject matter, if you don't mind me chiming in real quick.
Sure.
So the thing that occurs to me here is people don't want to be uncomfortable. And when I say people don't want to be uncomfortable, I mean white people don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to sit here and look at things very objectively and subjectively, really, and see what we are creating, what we are causing, because it hurts and it's painful. And the psychology here is that as humans, and this is no excuse, because I am an avid advocate for awareness and self-awareness especially. But what's happening psychologically is that as humans, we're programmed to increase pleasure and decrease pain. We are programmed to avoid pain. And so what's happening is we have a lot of unaware, more ignorant, I'll use the word, sure, just unaware people going about, seriously, I'll just say it, I don't care. It can people can get mad at me, that's all right. They get, that's what it is. They don't want to be uncomfortable, so they don't.
It's true.
They say, I'm perpetuating the problem. I'm doing something crappy.
Yes, and the other, I think, kind of the next piece to that is, so they don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to do that. Then there's this one. I want to get your take on this, Mervyn, because this is one of the things that just, it almost cracks me up, but then it's so aggravating that it's not funny. Is they will find the one Black person or this one little group of Hispanics or something that agrees with their ignorance, that says, no, there's not a problem. No, there's not this. And I do want to say that, yes, plenty of very wonderful, amazing people have overcome difficult situations, okay, and still risen above and still accomplished a lot of things. And yes, your own personal behavior has a great deal to do with that. I do not want to undermine that. I am a big proponent that your own strength takes you so far. But what is your take on that idea that, I found a Black person or a woman or whoever that does not think that this is a problem?
I mean, I think like, I mean, like, not to get political again, but I think like wasn't it this something James? I think this Republican guy who basically like didn't want to release the papers for Breonna Taylor, basically kept everything private, and basically everybody's calling him a house Negro. I don't know if you heard about him. He's a Black Republican, and like, the Black community is basically kind of like, if he was to go out in the Black community, I think they would just probably just like,
tar and feather. Yeah.
And so like I've come across this myself, and in all honesty, how do you go? I've been guilty of it myself, and I've been guilty of it myself because like my socialization is very, very different. So when I was born in the UK, but when I was 2.5 years old, I went to Sierra Leone. So when I started growing up, your socialization or self-identity is actually, you form pretty much a good identity for yourself, who you are. In psychology, between ages 0 and 5, you pretty much already know who you are and kind of like your only sense of self-value, self-worth. And so I never grew up as a child actually knowing that I was Black. I found that out when I came to to Belgium, which I was 6.5 at the time. And I remember the first time that a white kid tried to be racist with me. It's like, and it just didn't work because like I already have a strong sense of self. So I've never been the kind of person try to be racist with me. It doesn't work. And so basically I remember this first example. So this kid says to me, "Oh, Mervin, you're like dog poo. You're brown like dog poo." Right. And so I just go to him. I said, "Yeah, well, you know what?" I said, "You're dog poo too, because when dog poo dries in the sun, it becomes white." Right. And
there you go.
That's a great comeback.
Yeah, but I've always been like that. It's like you can't get to me. And for me, it's like,
right.
Somebody who feels that they need to put me down, they're the ones with the issue. Right. They're the ones like,
right.
I don't spend my time having to put anybody down. But like going back to what you're saying, finding that black person, because of my socialization and how I felt about my blackness and how I felt about myself, sense of self and, my self-pride and how I go about in the world, I just thought, well, other black people, like, they just need to get that. Right. And I was just like, and I was just like, I'm like, well, other black and this is like the Congolese in Belgium. I was like, well, they're different from the Black British, and in the same way that the Black British are different from the Black Americans. And I wasn't, well, I mean, certainly not wise enough. I certainly wasn't educated enough to understand, like, socialization and how that happens for different people, and how if as a girl, you're growing up and you're told, like, well, girls don't do this and girls don't do that, girls do this and girls do that. It's like there's an entire universe of things that you're going to tell yourself you can't do because you're a girl. And in the same way that, like, when you're talking about black people not being able to see other black people doing certain things, if you're not exposed to, like, I had a black mom who basically, like, put together furniture, moved us house 5 times, bought 2 homes, while saying put a 3. I'm just used to a strong black woman. I just know that women can do everything. There was never such thing as, like, I never became the man of the house. There were no jobs for men or jobs for women. It's like I've just always known that, like, there's no difference. So I think that, like, your socialization and your family context, there are tons of things that come into play. And I think when those black people are trying to find that black person, it's just the black person who's just as ignorant as they are. In the sense that, like, that black person is not taking anything into consideration, about the person's upbringing, the circumstances.
Right. And I hate to cut you off, Marvin. I'm so sorry, but we're running behind now. So I gotta go. Yeah. But no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's the perpetuation. They're on the same side of the fence of the ignorance. It's not thinking outside of their experience and thinking about other people's experience and other people's concerns. So I want to thank you both, Mervin and Michaela, for coming on. Everybody connect to them. These are awesome human beings. Connect to them, and to Jolyn as well, who was on before. Have a wonderful rest of the day, guys. Bye. Bye. And I think we have both Frank and Mina in our waiting room. We're going to go ahead and bring them on. So Frank works as a diversity and inclusion specialist. I'm very excited, very, very excited to have you on with us today. This is such an important topic. It really, really is. Let's go ahead and bring Mina on as well. Where's Mina? There she is. Oh, Mina, we got to move you a little bit. We can only see half your head. There you are. Hey. There you are. Hey, Mina. And Mina is in Canada. Yep. So she's in Toronto, Canada. And then Frank, where are you located?
I'm in Connecticut.
Connecticut. All right, wonderful. Okay, so that's where they are. And Mina, tell us a little bit real quick, just very, 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 very brief, what it is that you do for a living.
I am a professor and an entrepreneur for a social enterprise. So I help people see value in other people in terms of employment.
Yes.
So diversity and inclusion, huge. Yes.
Huge part of what you do. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we've been talking about this problem, right? So we have this problem that, factually speaking, minorities and women are just not making it to positions of power. They're getting jobs, but they're just not making it to positions of power. And again, I just want to hash through these numbers real quick. So I always hear this ridiculous statistic, and it drives me bonkers. Like, well, this race is lazy. That's why they don't have this. Okay, so let's clear this up real quick, white people. All right, we're going to put you back down in your place. So the group of people that participates the most in the workforce by percentage is the Hispanic people. Okay, they are number one by a few points, by several percentage points. Percentage wise, the Hispanics will participate more than the Asian population, again by percentage, and then the white and black populations are basically tied. There are a couple of like the fractions of a percent off from each other in participation. So these are, everybody participates equally. Women participate just as much as men do. Women make up over 40% of our workforce, but holds, less than 10%, but hold 7.5% of executive level jobs.
Yep.
Minorities hold just under 4% of executive jobs. So there's a problem here. And when white males only make up 37.5% of our workforce, there's a problem that they're holding most of the power positions. And white guys, I'm not saying we don't value you. Okay, you're great, wonderful, but we've got to keep this going. So we know the problem. So it's not happening. We're not getting to that point. We've discussed earlier in the show that education doesn't matter, right? That even when there's equal education, there's still a big disparity in wage gap and in positions. So, Frank, I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Mina on this one because you work specifically with getting candidates jobs. What do you see in your day-to-day life as to why that is?
I completely agree with you. When it comes to immigrant population, yeah, people are, there's a lot of employment, but even at that senior level, immigrants are not hired. And they're like, oh, but we hire immigrants. Yeah, you're looking at immigrants and you're hiring them at, junior to entry level to mid-level positions. But what about the senior positions? What, they don't have Canadian experience? Well, it's against the law to say those things. So I think there is those systematic biases which come into play. And when I say that, I specifically want to say, pay attention to the words that are used over here. Right? These words really, really matter when it comes to diversity. There are organizations that are doing absolutely fantastic, right? And increasing, but even there. So I was really enjoying your conversation with Mervyn over here, where, you guys were talking about white men, white women, specifically the example where he said that, I think it was your sister who said that, but one of you said that companies do not even realize that they are so white heavy.
Yeah, they don't. They don't at all.
So
they know, trust me.
So, some do, and some really just are kind of like, I've seen both. And Frank, what's your experience with that? Because you and I have kind of gone into your story.
So here's the question. If in HR you have white females hiring or white males hiring, how are you going to bring somebody who does not look like you into the fold? That's been the big problem. You're not giving these people opportunities. When you're saying, oh, we need somebody in diversity who has 5 or 10 or 15 years experience, you're already disqualifying that person. There have been resumes. I had to retweak my resume, but if I put Frank Claudio Emanuel Jr., holy crap, check the box here. You're Hispanic. I'm not going to hire you. Let's not be.
And how do you know that? Let's put this out there. You're not just saying that. You did an experiment.
I did actually
with
through
this.
Cornell. Yes, I did. And what I did was actually I applied to the same 4 companies. I put it down as my legal name. Did not get a call back, and then
not a single call.
And changed it. Changed my name a little bit, and I got a call back for an interview.
To make it seem more Caucasian, to make it seem more white, and then you got called back.
White. That's correct. Also, I had to change some things like the organization I do. So if I'm an alpha, I took alpha off my thing because alpha is going to put me down. They say you're part of an Latino organization, so I took that off. I deal with domestic women's group to help them out. I took that off. I basically made it as white as possible, and all of a sudden I got it in the door with an interview.
Wow.
Same. I had to basically retool myself, rebrand myself in a way so I can get in the door. I also have a disability, which is described. Basically, it's a reading disability. All right. And I've had to go through it for many, many years. And the thing is, I've had to hide that. In my last job I was pushed out the door because, again, when you think about hiring minority, they're thinking a white female. That is not justified as a minority. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
I keep telling
And
people that I'm not a minority.
Okay. And also the
know.
big thing too is what you said about companies. Oh no, Wells Fargo comes out and says a statement after what's happened when he says we can't find adequate people in certain Latinos or any African American. Really? But you're not looking at African American schools or Latino schools. You're not looking at community colleges. You're not going to the websites to look for these individuals. You're just whitewashing it. That's all it is. And what's happening is when you look at the websites, I think I'm appalled by it because you're using them as a pawn to say we're doing what's right for the people, and we know that's wrong.
Yeah. So, Mina, I want to ask you real quick kind of on that subject. So when it comes to company messaging and getting people in the door for hiring, because we're trying to find the solutions, right? So we know there's this problem. How do you gear your marketing and your job requisitions to get the minority and the immigrants candidates?
Skills marketing, completely skills marketing. So I know that there are certain organizations, multiple, that will discriminate. I don't even go there. So I get my participants involved, my students involved in values, right? We look at the values of the organization and we reach out to the top person within those organizations. I've said this before. If there are values in that company, and you said so many statistics, so that's why I'd written a bunch of statistics, but Glassdoor recently announced that 67% of active job seekers, the one stat that they look at is the company diversity.
Wow.
Is the company diverse enough? Workforce diverse enough.
So 67% of people care about the diversity in a workplace.
Definitely. So
that's something to hear.
We, I hide the name and I hide the background and I say this person has these skills and you're working on these projects and these skills are what you're looking for. Let's do an informational interview. So at that level, when you're reaching out to the top dog of the company, regardless of who they are, what they are, it's an impression that you're making based on skills. And I know it's really tough to reach to the top person because HR comes into play. And like Frank said very clearly, I'm not going to hire you if you don't look like me. I'm not going to hire you if you don't speak like me.
Absolutely.
Yes, this is a big problem.
And those are the systematic biases, right? Those are inbuilt biases that we have. And, just like what I was saying, understand before being understood. The importance of put human into HR, put heart into HR. Why are we talking about that? What has this pandemic taught us? This pandemic has taught us is we are going to be a global world.
Yes,
we are. And you're saying at one place it's a talent shortage, right? If you're just looking at tech talent, where is your product going to be made? Most likely in Asia. So how's your Hindi? How's your Mandarin?
Right, exactly.
Right.
And it's about having the new perspectives and growing. And I love that you talked about skill-based hiring. That's actually, I think you know this, I'm building out a product that's what it does. It's an applicant tracking system that only shows the skills, the talents, the reliability, no dates, by the way. It just talks about reliability and things like that to focus it on what actually matters. So Frank, you had a comment about that.
So think about this. There was a study done at Carnegie Mellon for people interviewing for positions on Broadway as musicians, okay? And they found out that 90% of the time, if a male walked on the stage, he would get the job before the female. They decided to put a curtain in front of them so you wouldn't know it, and they actually muffled the sounds of their shoes so you didn't know if it was male or female. And the numbers, ladies, went up from 10% for women to over 60% getting hired. Just based on, again, the curtain and making sure you couldn't hear what kind of shoes they were wearing.
Right.
But to Mina's point, though, the thing is also they're not going to hire somebody. I've actually had people myself say to me, Frank, I've had to change my hair color. Oh, I'm serious. Blonde.
Oh, yeah, the ageism. Yeah, that and ageism as well.
I'm talking about, but to me, the big problem in HR right now, and Mina will tell you this to me too, you'll know it too, is that I'm sorry, I'm not a 5'2" white lady with blonde hair and brown eyes.
Me neither.
Blue eyes. That's it. So, but let's look out there. That's right.
Still white.
You know what? Right.
I know.
But they're hiring that, so they don't see themselves.
That's true.
And they don't see.
It's true.
You know, again, I'm not 110 pounds. That's what's happening. And then companies wonder
and
why what's going on. I'm sorry.
There's so many types of discrimination and ageism, which I thought that's where you're going, but you weren't. And you made a good point too. The good looking does matter in hiring too, by the way, but that's a whole other show that we're going to do. But
that's good.
but ageism is so real. So we've talked about, you know, gender and all that. So age, this fascinated me too. So that people that are in the 55 to 64 range,
mm-hmm.
their ability to get a job drops by over 40%, and their wage gap goes that people will pay less to get them. And it's this devalued, especially women. It's way worse with women than with men. Women, we have it's about 25% gap between what a man in the same 55 to 64 range can make. Women just plummet at that age. Like people just do not perceive that we have worth past the age of 55. But men too, it does go down for men as well too. And it's this weird, I don't understand that. Like, wouldn't you want somebody that's been there more? They have more experience. Why would you suddenly just devalue them in that way? That makes complete zero sense.
Because
why do you think that is?
Line. They're saving on the bottom line. And
Mm-hmm.
Mina will say that. So most people, they're not investing in their people, and they're only being there 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden, they're going to go outside instead of grooming people inside. This is a big problem. But I talked to one of my colleagues in Florida. He said, listen, I'm down here in Florida, and my value went up because all of a sudden I have the talents, and they don't have the talent here. And she's in Fort Lauderdale. And the thing is, it's different talent bases across the country. They're going to hire more consultants, so they don't have to pay your benefits, stuff like that. But again, it is mentoring, as Mina would say, and they don't want to invest in that. They don't want to invest in any of those things that keep people there. And with this remote work environment, they're saving on costs. And at the end of the day, who sacrifices? We do as people. And I'm looking at my stuff. You're not going to get into the C-suite because if you're not part of the group, you're not. And there's also been a good statistic also, I'll tell you right now, and you can look up the data. I think it's 20 to 30%. If you're an African-American individual or Latino who's in the C-suite, you will not bring your own type with you because you're with the boys right now, and I'm not going to bring my own type. The people that would do that, and I know that's for a fact, that's why I shout out my Latinas, is because they stand up for what's right. That's it. The men will not do that. That's true. Actually, women are more likely to stand up and say this is wrong. That is true. Women are, and to bring more of their own, and minorities as well. I always get more employee referrals from minority people. I don't quite understand why that is, but it's true. I get more employee referrals from minority people. Mina, do you see things like that?
I completely agree. I also wanted to point out when you're talking about ageism, 65% of new businesses are being started. So 65% entrepreneurs are under the age of 30.
Yes.
And they are not comfortable working with somebody over the age of 50. It's like, I don't want to work with dad or mom in the office because we become at that, we come with that experience. So there is that discrimination also happening. So as real as ageism is, experienced people are now becoming more mentors. So going to what Frank was saying is the social enterprise that I run, Destination CEO, is about mentoring newcomers. And there is no age gap. There's I have a 25-year-old mentoring a 50-year-old, right?
Yeah, it just depends on what they need.
Exactly. Yeah. It's skill-based. But in the workforce, people are not looking at that. They're like, oh, this person has too much experience. And automatically it gets to that age thing. If I'm going to hire this person, I'll have to pay this person a certain salary.
Right. Well, and it's also that people have this odd idea that older people are slow. And
that's
just
true.
silly.
I agree with you.
They definitely think that, but it's lunacy. I tell people I have a father-in-law that can run circles around me. I just taught my 84-year-old grandparents two different brand new technologies while they were here that now they can just fly through. And I myself have trained multiple people over the age of 55 how to join a whole new industry and learn recruiting and all of that. And they excelled. And that was learning a whole new industry, not even just changing over to a new position within the same realm. Ageism is silly. I'm just going to put that. That's one of the dumbest.
I want to congratulate you, Catherine. Sorry, I just want to congratulate you on that, because recruitment is one industry that age and experience matters big time, because you have the experience of recognizing the talent in people that perhaps many times somebody without experience will not have. And that's when you're working with a recruiter, a senior recruiter, experienced recruiter versus a new recruiter, you can immediately see the difference, right? The kind of
someone who actually knows what they're doing anyway.
Someone who's book smart and someone who's experience smart.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
She does it at home too. I think you hit the nail on the head, Catherine. So you're teaching multi-generations at home. Mina, we're having multi-generations in the house. We have grandparents with parents and grandchildren, the sandwich generation. So if they're evolving, why isn't corporate America evolving? This has been going on for years.
Yes,
for years.
Great point.
Right now, we have parents being helped out by grandparents so they can work and survive. When their kids are going to school, they're helping them out. But the thing is, that if you have an accent, if you look different, let's be realistic. This has been an issue for many, many, many years. And the thing is that we expect the politicians to fix it. They're not. It's got to go from the bottom up, not the top down.
Inside. And that's 100%. That's a great tie-in, Frank, to my next guest. Thank you very much, you guys, for coming on today. You guys were wonderful. I really enjoyed having both of you. We'll have you on again to talk about this because I have so much to say about diversity and inclusion. Have a wonderful rest of the day, guys. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye.
And I am so excited. And I want to go ahead and bring on my next guest. I don't like just looking at myself here. So let's go ahead and bring on Janice Downey. She's wonderful. There she is. And you look beautiful. I'm not sexually harassing you. I just want to put that out there. I'm so fixating. I like your outfit. Yeah. So I'm excited to have you on and to talk about this with you, because one of the things I really like about you is that you constantly have this positive, beautiful attitude. You're constantly learning. You're constantly trying to do new things and improve yourself. And you're constantly doing things that scare you, like coming on this show. I think I gave you a heart attack when I told you I wanted you to come on and then refused to prep with you. And I think it's wonderful. And so Frank gave us a beautiful lead in. So we're talking about diversity and all of these awful things that are happening and these crazy disparities, these just insane disparities. But you're going to talk to us today about how to grow as a person and how to overcome. And I want to get into the things that you prepared for sure, but real quick, I want to talk to you about on the side of making sure that you're not being discriminatory, accidentally being hateful, accidentally leaving somebody else. I think for a lot of people it is accidental. I think for a lot of people don't realize that they're doing things. In fact, Michaela gave very good evidence to that earlier, talking about the psychology element behind prejudice and diversity. What are some of the things that you would do inside of either an organization or even just yourself as a person to make sure that you are including everybody and that you are really paying attention to what's going on in the world?
So thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, even though it does scare me. So it's anyway, so to answer your question, I've been fortunate enough to work with customers. And so as I deal with companies who are asking me to create new products and programs and work with their customers to understand what their pain points are, then it really does help me personally champion that perspective throughout the organization. So I kind of feel like I'm already empowered to represent various people and their perspectives to the organization. I've been fortunate enough to work with bosses who pretty much say, challenge us. You know, let's not be the status quo. We didn't hire you for the status quo. So represent that. Personally, I come from a perspective where I'm for the underdog anyway. And being a female in a man's world in the companies that I've worked with, that's how I roll. I look for opportunities to champion different perspectives and bring everybody together.
Right. And I think that's what it is. It's conversations and bringing people together to make decisions, including hiring, and bringing people together to make decisions about the company and the culture and all that. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's communication and then taking action based on that communication. It's not, you can't just sit around and flap your gums and think things are actually going to change. You have to actually do things. So what are some of the things on the other side? So when you are the one that's having to swim upstream, as Mervyn said earlier, and like you said, you are a woman in a predominantly male field, product development and product ownership predominantly. It's slowly shifting to have more women, but there's a lot more men in that field. What are some of the things that you do to teach others a better way and to overcome from your own perspective?
Well, thank you for asking about that. But basically, I grew up with parents who said, I can go for it and I can be anybody or do anything. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not gonna do that, but it gave me that mindset. So that's my number one that I live by. And because even I have been discriminated against in the workforce, I understand that it's all about mindset. And we've got to continually promote positive mindset. So I go for it, number one. Number two, I've recently learned how critical and important it is to be authentic, be your best self, be real with people.
Yes.
That was not necessarily my strong suit. So I've had to work on that and be more vulnerable. And then the third thing is from day one of my birth, I think I want to help people and be kind. So that opportunity to give to others has really generated a positive return back to me and others. And it's just everybody is paying it forward. And I'm fortunate to be in several networking groups right now that essentially everybody is doing that. They're all positive,
good,
giving to each other. They're all encouraging each other. And so that's uplifting. And that's
it is. It is. And I want to pause real quick there because I want to say something about that. I love that you brought that up about the giving back because I want to touch on a couple of things about that. So number one, as it pertains to diversity and inclusion. Okay. So there's a lot of different groups. Diversity is not just about race. We've talked about this throughout the show. You know, we're talking about, and prejudices and all that kind of thing. There's age to be considered, sexual orientation. There is gender. There is race, obviously. People with disabilities, that type of thing. And one myth that just blows my mind. I'm going to go ahead and dispel this real quick at the beginning of my statement. Is that there is no such thing as a self-made man or woman. Okay, there's not. That does not exist. There's no way as a human being not to be influenced by other human beings, not to be helped by other human beings. You learn from other human beings. There is no such thing. Okay, and you're talking to an entrepreneur. All right, there is no such thing. And so as you get bigger, there are several wonderful entrepreneurs that are great about this. Damon John is great about this. Even Donnie Boyven, who's a friend of mine, and I work with him, and several others as well. Mark Cuban actually is huge. He's a very famous entrepreneur, and he's very good about giving back and doing a mentorship program and helping other people learn. So as you grow, give back and maybe find somebody who didn't have the same opportunities as you. Ladies, find another woman, or Caucasian people, don't be afraid to mentor a minority. Maybe reach out to somebody with disabilities if you have one and say, hey, I was able to reach this level. Let me show you. Like, it's okay. You can do it. You can still do everything everybody else can. And just reach out to them, and don't just stick to only the group that you know. Go out and find other people that spark your interest, and mentor them, and bring them to your networking group, and introduce them to other people, and lift them up and raise them up. I think that is so very important. So very, very important.
I have been really encouraged at, if you just ask, which is kind of hard to do sometimes, if you put yourself out there and you just ask, I don't think I've ever had anybody, at least recently, turn me down for that. They're
It's true.
To help and give and guide you in some form or fashion.
Yes. And I would encourage anyone watching this to do that, to reach out and to learn and to grow. And even if you want to just ask somebody, hey, I don't know what to do about diversity and inclusion at my company, or I don't know if I'm doing anything wrong. There are plenty of wonderful influencers out there who will talk to you, who will take the time. Deanna Stinson-Reese, Madison Butler. There are a few others as well. Sejal, and I cannot think of her last name, but we will find her. I will post this later on the Career Launch site and have you connect to her. But there are wonderful human beings. Frank, we just had him on. He will talk to you. He's a wonderful diversity and inclusion specialist. So like you said, reach out and have a conversation and just ask for help. Ask questions.
I have to say, Catherine, I so much appreciate you, because you are all about connecting people, and you stay up and stay connected to people. You find out things that are new worlds to me and introduce me. And that's what we should all be doing for each other. You're just amazing at that, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And I learned it from other people. That's something I learned from other people that passed that on to me. And I think you have to do that. Just get out in the world and meet and greet. I now have friends across the world because I just reached out and went, hey, I'm over here. What are you doing? What's going on with you? I call her the producer of our show, Nina Modi. She's a wonderful individual, and she's been all over and knows all kinds of fascinating people. And I learn from her constantly because of that. Absolutely fascinating. So what are some of your other tips for just getting out there and being more vulnerable and getting to know other people just as human beings and just coming to understand them? What are some of the things that you've learned?
So one thing is, as I go through my day, my work environment, sometimes it will dawn on me that I'm just in my own world, doing my own thing. And even though I'm asking customers what they think and all of that, it's still, from my perspective, I'm processing it.
Right.
And so sometimes I realize that, number one, you've got to be aware, which, I knock myself and go, okay, it's time for me to ask somebody else their perspective and share the information that I've received from customers and say, what do you think about this? And then shut up. And that part is not good. I don't do that well.
But it's so important. Just shut your mouth, listen, and then process it. Yeah.
That's probably something I need to do more of, as well as one of my friends put on her banner, I think it was on LinkedIn, she said, work hard and be kind. And I thought, oh, that is awesome. That's what we all need to do. is
Yes.
be the best we can, be the best we can, and then be kind to other people. And, if we did that, we probably wouldn't have half the problems we have today.
That's so true. I have a saying, and I hope my sister's still watching because she's going to crack up when I say this, because I say this to her all the time. Just don't be shitty. Okay? This is so simple, people. Just don't, in the show, but just don't be shitty. It's not that I'm not even a nice person. I am mean. And I am saying this, just don't be shitty. It's not that hard, folks. Think outside of yourself. The world is not you. The world is not your experience. There's so much going on. And let me tell you, as somebody who's done management, as somebody who's been at executive level, as someone who's built teams across the nation, and has worked with many other people who have done that, if somebody in your population, whether it's at work or in life, is telling you that something is a problem, it's a problem. All right. And we're not talking about the one person who says that we're going to all be abducted by aliens and be probed. Okay. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a group of people that have come together and said, hey, this is still an issue. We need to be working on this. You need to listen. And it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. Right,
Yep.
Jan? I mean, Janice, you know,
Oh, totally. You got to ask and you got to listen and be open, and then figure out how you use that information with your information.
100%. Yeah, because you may not hear what you want to hear.
Right.
Right. And sometimes, yeah,
because it shakes you up and it goes, oh, my reality may not be the reality.
yes, yeah. And even as a company, it's so exciting to have something go, bam. Oh, we need to be doing this differently. We need to try this a different way. And in business, and really and truly in life too, there is no standing still. Okay. Everything is always in motion. You're either sliding backwards or you're pushing forward. So you need to shake yourself up. You need to have conversations. You need to change things. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. Do something different. And then, yeah. And just when you're talking to people, don't just think about what you have to say. Don't just think about your thoughts. Listen to them, process it, and hear it from their perspective. And even if you just don't like other human beings, I don't, still listen to them. Still listen to them and say, okay, how is this going to help me in my life? How is this going to help me further? How is this? There's even selfish reasons to do this, folks. It's not just about being nice to other human beings. You will get further the more you understand life, the more you understand other people's perspectives and their stories.
Right. So one of my mantras, one of the things that motivates me every single day is to learn something new, and then secondarily to challenge myself.
Right.
So if you think about it, we all are learners, and we've got to continue that, because otherwise we'd be stagnant and only come at life from our perspective, which is not this perspective that's out there among everybody. So we've got to learn from people. So when I have conversations with you or with others or on the phone, I try really hard to find those gold nuggets that they have from their perspective. What did they enjoy? How did they get where they are? What was the biggest challenge? And I'm amazed at how much I can learn and then incorporate in what I'm doing and be a better, person.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. I learn from people all the time. I've learned from people, again, across the world, but even just in different perspectives here in the United States. I've learned so much. And it's, you really do. If you take the time, it's amazing how you can evolve as a human being when you just really take the time to learn other people in different ways, different than yours. Try out different things. You never know. It's just like going to the same restaurant. You don't eat at most people don't eat at the exact same restaurant every single time you go out, right? You go to different places. It's the same thing.
I will have to say, having a child that is very, very different from where I mentally come from and think. He is into culture and languages and wanting to learn people and what they experience in other countries. And I am so glad, because that's given me a love and a passion to do the same thing. So I'm just so grateful, to learn.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And see, learning from a younger person, it can be done. We all know to learn from older people, but we can also learn from younger people.
Yeah. It's amazing the perspectives. If you just listen to people.
Yeah, it is.
The insights that especially the younger people have are like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that. That is brilliant.
Well, everybody has value. I've learned from people older than me that same way. It's really fascinating. And you're right. So just find people's value, learn, listen, and then apply to your life. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today, Janice. You were terrific.
Thank you. Enjoy it.
You were a great guest. Have a great rest of the day. Bye. All right, guys. So we are now wrapping up our diversity career launch. I hope you got some good perspective, some good information. It was interesting for me too. You always hear new stories and new ideas and all of that. So I'm going to kind of sum up what we learned today. Factually speaking, according to the U.S. Department of Labor and the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, there are factually, percentage-wise, not numbers, because every populace represents a different number of people in our country, but by percentage of each group, there are factually disparities between the minority and female experience versus the Caucasian male experience. They're factual, large differences in our country and also across the world. We are not unique in this, okay? And what we have also heard is that people are having personal interactions with us and personal experiences, which means that it all breaks down to the person, okay? We can't go walking into Citibank, and I'm not calling them out or saying that they're bad, but we can't walk into an organization that large and just say, hey, change everything and expect things to change. It has to start at the personal level, folks, okay? Get out there, have conversations with people, get to know people, listen to them, hear their experiences, process it, and then apply the lessons that you've learned to your life. Make actual changes. Take one little thing that you're doing and make sure you don't do that, or something that you're not doing and make sure that you start doing that. Okay, this is how change actually starts to happen at the individual level. And on top of that, make sure that you're electing people that share your ethics, okay, and share the vision that you have for America. And we're not just talking about the economy. We all care about the economy, okay? We're not just talking about the big key issues and all of that. We're talking about day in, day out. What is this person going to actively do to push towards the type of America that I want? An inclusive America, and an America where everybody has equal opportunity, everybody has equal rights, everybody. And by the way, this is a fact that not everybody knows. Women do not, to this day, have equal rights on a national level. In the United States, we have equal rights in most states. There are a lot of laws in place that do protect women, but we do not have equal rights on a national level in our country. It is time for that to change. It is time for Black people no longer to be held down. It's time to stop seeing the media only target minority communities when they're talking about crime, when white people commit over 60% of the crime in this country. Okay? Minorities are not the ones doing the crime, folks. That's not reality. It's just not. We need to start pushing towards a world where reality is shown and not just the white perspective, is I think the best way to say it. So anyway, that's my little spiel. Getting off. I know we don't really on Career Launch. We keep it real professional. We don't get too personal. We don't get too emotional. But for this episode, I don't think there was a way to avoid it. So I want to thank all of my guests. You were all wonderful. You were all terrific. If you did not catch the entire show, please go back. We had some phenomenal human beings on this show from across the world talking about diversity and inclusion and sharing their experiences. Please connect with all of them and myself on LinkedIn. We're always here for you. And outside of that, everybody be great. Have a wonderful rest of the week. And we will see you to talk about building professional relationships in about 2 weeks. Have a good day, everybody.